All right, welcome back to the Healthy and Whole podcast. Today, I'm here with Jill Howell, and Jill is an emotional health coach. So Jill, tell us a little bit about who you are, what an emotional health coach even is, and then we'll jump into some of the topics that we're going to cover today.
Okay. Yeah. So I would call myself an emotional health coach as a broad term. But if we got more specific, I would say I'm a somatic trauma recovery coach. I'm an inner child healing coach. I am an embodiment coach. I am a self-compassion coach. I am, a trauma healing coach. Like you can just go and there's so many layers to what I do because what I do as an emotional health coach is very holistic and integrative. At least the approach that I take.
Yeah. So many terms there. And a lot of people are kind of like, wow, she just said a lot of words and a lot of terms.
Yeah.
Basically, I think what we'll do is let's go ahead and intro the topic that we're going to talk about today. And that'll help people to understand what all that means.
Yeah.
And why the type of work that you do specifically is really, really important and why we're here today to talk about it. So
sounds good.
Most of our clients, for instance, are, we're healthy and whole. We work with a lot of folks we work as health coaches, right? With folks who are trying to lose weight, trying to become physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually healthy. And one of the key frustrations that we observe with our clients and just with people in general in today's world is that they can easily become very frustrated because they know what they want, and yet they can struggle time after time to act or behave in the ways that are in alignment with what they say that they want, right? So they can say, I want to lose weight. I want to be healthier. I want to eat better. I want to be a good role model for my kids. I want. But they will find themselves at times acting in ways that are completely out of alignment with that.
Right.
And they don't know why. They can't figure out, why can't I just do the things that I feel like I know I'm supposed to be doing to be healthier? Or whatever the objective is for them in their life. And it can be very frustrating. And so I think that's why we're really excited to be here with you today, is because I think the work that you're doing in emotional health is directly correlated, and it's sort of the sneaky underlying problem that people are running into.
It's the shadows. It's in the shadows.
Yeah. It really is.
It's the shadow work.
Yeah, it is. It's the hidden problems that people don't even realize that they're falling prey to, right?
Yeah.
And so what we're really going to talk about today is we're going to start to open up the topic of trauma and emotional healing, and help people to understand how trauma and how their mental and emotional health might be limiting them in all of the things, and being the person they want to be, living the life that they want and that they deserve to live. And we're going to kind of break down, what is trauma? How do you know if you have unhealed trauma? What does trauma and emotional healing work look like?
Yeah.
And hopefully my goal for today's podcast is that we're going to give some people out there who are frustrated, we're going to give them some hope that there's a pathway for healing for them, and a pathway through which they can have a greater sense of control in their lives.
I love it.
Yeah, let's do it. So let's start with the basics. If you would just kind of open up for us, what is trauma and who has trauma?
Yeah, such a good question, because honestly, so many people think that trauma is an event, something big that's happened. And a lot of people will walk around saying, I don't have trauma. I didn't have anything big that happened to me. And there is become a new understanding of what trauma really is, because it's not just the event that happened. It could be an event, but it could very well be not an event. It could be not getting your needs met, your core needs met, like in a form of neglect for too long of a period of time, not getting what you need. Yeah. It can be something that is too much or too fast for the nervous system when you don't have the resources and the agency to really cope and insert the skills to really move through an experience. So anything that happens, but the key part is what is left within you is what determines if it's traumatic. We can go through the exact same experience and it could be traumatic for me, but not for you. And it's all based on your perspectives of the world, your experiences in the world. And so we have to recognize that everybody has trauma to some extent.
Yeah.
To some extent, none of us had perfect parents. I'm not a perfect parent. You're not a perfect parent.
Definitely not a perfect parent. No.
We didn't have perfect parents. Some of our needs that needed met were quiet and nobody knew about. So just growing up, you know, everybody, I think, has some measure of emotional wounds that are carried with deep within that are still unresolved.
Yeah. So it sounds like it's basically any life experience that left a mark because of the way that we experienced that thing.
Yes.
And sounds like it's rooted in whatever our perspectives or our beliefs were at that time of our life when we experienced that thing. For some of us, it wouldn't leave a mark, but for some of us, it does. And then that mark can stay with us is kind of what I'm hearing, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and when we don't have somebody who's walking us through as children, especially through the hard circumstances, that is when we're left with not knowing what to do with it. And our coping mechanism is to repress, avoid, ignore, and try to move on because we don't know what else to do with it. Yeah. And it still stays with us in our body.
Yeah. And I think that is something that will probably be a recurring theme as we talk today is how much these things that, you know, the trauma, the marks that are left behind by by life events, like you said, could be big life events, could be just the absence of certain things that we maybe needed at different stages of our lives, but how much and how long these things can stick with us and how much then as they stick with us, they can have a pretty massive influence on our day-to-day thoughts, feelings, emotions, and our behaviors.
For sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So it sounds like, as I'm hearing you talk about this, that really we all have trauma.
Yeah.
We sometimes think we don't have trauma because we didn't have a massive life event happen.
Right.
But we all have needs and we all have beliefs and perspectives and we all have, like someone would say, we all have baggage, right? But that's basically what it is, right?
Baggage, wounds, whatever language you want to use. It's still bottom line. It's nervous system trauma.
Yeah.
That's what we're looking at. We're looking at how our nervous system responded in experiences that we've had.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think back to, I'm going to share a little bit of my own personal story here, just because I think it's relevant, but I've talked on some of our other episodes of the podcast and I've shared with people about, I have a history with depression and anxiety. And I spent probably the first couple of decades of my young adult life, you know, from junior high up through probably my early 30s before I started to get a hold on things, being super socially, I had a lot of social anxiety and terrified of doing things wrong or failing and making mistakes and all that stuff. And to be fair, I don't think I was ever able to go back and figure out why or where that came from. I was able to, I feel like I was able to grow out of that. But as we're talking about trauma, just to use this as an example, if I was to rewind the tapes or able to rewind the tapes, I wonder if I could go back and find instances of my early life, you know, childhood or young adulthood that left a mark. And is it, I'm going to ask us an extra question here, just because I'm curious for my own thoughts here. Is it possible for us to experience something like that leaves a mark and to sort of grow beyond it, even if we don't know where the original sin or the original
100%
event may have happened?
I think you can. I think it's possible. I think it's different. I think the healing journey looks different for each person and what they truly need. Some people really need to know. But I do believe that what I do in my work is a lot of parts work. And so it's not even a necessary to know all the specifics of the past as much as it is to know what part of me is still feeling a certain emotion and it's carried with me my entire life. Yeah. Some people can pinpoint when that started. Yeah. Some people just can't because they've completely blanked out and have repressed and have numbed and disassociated so much from the past as a coping strategy. Yeah. It's a survival skill. Yeah. And so, I mean, our brains are brilliant, really, in the ways that it tries to protect us. Yeah. So I think that the more that we are learning to respond to what is present in each moment authentically, having the in sincere self-awareness, the being willing to take the pause to go inward and see, what is my body doing? What is my body saying? What is my body holding right now? What is my nervous system indicating to me is happening? And us learning to respond to that with compassion and love, and learning the skills and having tools and skills to be able to move ourselves through an emotional state.
Yeah.
Because what's happened is most of the emotions that we feel stuck in today as adults, we started feeling stuck in as children.
Yeah.
And we've just, I call it a chain. We have this chain of that emotion, of experience after experience, proving to us that whatever belief that we've grown from that or, developed from that, the story behind it is true. And so we're looking for the markers that prove that story to be true as we go into adulthood. Yes. And we can break that cycle. We can learn to break the stress cycle. We can learn to break the emotional patterning by the way that we respond to ourselves.
Yeah.
So I do believe it's possible.
Yeah. So it sounds like really there's kind of two pathways. You might go back to if you're aware, you have awareness of specific events, you could go back to those. And part of it might be helping to gain new perspective around those and awareness around it. But even in the absence of knowing where a trauma came from originally, just understanding the way that trauma is impacting you now today, and how it's impacting your thought processes and your beliefs and your perspectives of the world now and how you're behaving, you can still work with that.
Yeah.
Right?
Honestly, bottom line, it's all about your relationship with yourself.
Yeah.
Because all of the trauma, if you want to call it trauma or whatever, all of the wounds, all of the baggage, all of the traumas from the past that have happened have left us disconnected from ourselves, disassociated, numb, just removed and not in connection and not aware. And it's easier because the opposite side of actually moving towards it is scary because it's unfamiliar.
Yeah.
Our brains are wired to protect us and it's fearful whenever there's something new.
Yeah.
So
we've established that there's a lot of different things that we experience throughout our entire lives, starting all the way back from childhood, that can leave lasting impressions and marks on us that we carry throughout our entire lives and have a massive impact on how we live life, how we interact with life. The next question I would have is, how do you see trauma showing up with people? How do you see it impacting them in their day-to-day life? How does it sort of rear its head and impact people? Like, in other words, how do people know? Like, how do people recognize, hey, I have potentially some trauma or some marks, that I could potentially really benefit from getting some coaching around and understanding? Like, how does it show up? How do you see it? I could describe on our end with our clients how I sometimes see it, but I'd love to hear your perspective first.
Yeah, I'd see it as two directions here. First, the body. The body is a perfect indicator of there being something that is stuck and held within the body and causing distress on the nervous system. So chronic illness, autoimmune disorders, anxiety, depression, those kinds of chronic symptoms, but chronic pain, fibromyalgia. Those are like the big things that are showing up on a body level that are, more medically seen. Yeah. Now, the other side of it is the behaviors. We can see that there's unhealed trauma in us based on behaviors. Yeah. Those of us who are perfectionists and people pleasers, trauma. Yeah. Those of us who struggle with sleep, have chronic fatigue, who, gosh, there's such a long list. I actually just made a post of like 25 different ways to know because, it's just feeling apathetic. It can, it can be having headaches. Yeah. Any chronic bodily sign that you're in some sort of distress or, it's holding something. Yeah. We can see it in the ways we act. Yeah. And the way we perceive the world and interact with the world.
For sure. And I think probably one of the things that I've noticed is I always look for kind of a sign of bewilderment, meaning like when they can't pinpoint a why behind their behavior, when they're just saying, I don't know why I do what I do.
Yeah.
I don't understand why I can't just do the things, or I can't just get my act together.
Yeah.
That's something we hear all the time when we're coaching people in the health space is, I don't know what's wrong with me.
Yeah.
It's just me. I just need to get my stuff together. And it's like, well, let's slow down for a minute and let's understand it's not that simple, right? Because we can't just wait for you to get your act together. We can't wait for you to white knuckle your way,
right?
To your goal or whatever it is that you're trying to achieve. There's a reason why you're struggling. And so I'm always looking for that, like that bewilderment, sort of that, like, I don't know. And then it's like, okay, well then, if there's not an obvious reason that we already have in our awareness, there's probably some deeper emotional work that could be done here. And kind of the way this also, I think, is so deeply just connected to, in our world, it shows up as emotional eating, right?
Yeah.
Emotional and stress eating in particular. And
addictions,
for sure. Yeah. Oh my gosh. It's all so tightly correlated together. And so the way that I kind of see it and the way I try to talk about it with folks is that if you walk back from behaviors where you felt some twinge of guilt or shame, that's because you probably felt some twinge of guilt or shame after a behavior like eating something, because the decision to eat that thing was not in alignment with your goals, your desires, or the person that you wanted to be. There was tension there, right?
Yes.
And when we walk back from some kind of a behavior where you felt guilt or shame, because it was out of alignment, usually we'll walk back and we'll find an emotion or a feeling. And what we did is we shut that emotion or that feeling down, or numbed it, or did something with it, with the food or alcohol or whatever it might have been. And we could have a whole discussion around, emotions and viewpoint on good emotions and bad emotions and all that stuff. But
which there are no bad emotions.
There are no bad emotions.
There are no bad emotions. Sorry, I had to say that.
No, I 100% agree. But I tell people it's like, I like to think of emotions, what people would consider painful or uncomfortable emotions, as fire alarms.
Yep.
Right. They're not, like, a fire alarm is a very useful thing.
Yeah.
Right. We would never look at the fire alarm going off, and it's annoying. It's uncomfortable. It's loud. It's all of those things. But they're there for a reason. Right. And even uncomfortable and painful emotions that we feel are there for a reason. Right. And all of this is just to say that how it shows up for us and what we see is a lot of times in emotional eating, and we're silencing the fire alarms of these emotions with food or whatever behavior it is where we're feeling that guilt and shame. And the trick, and I think probably what we're going to get into a little bit here as we talk about the work that you're doing, is it sounds like you're really just giving people tools and frameworks to not silence the fire alarm and to kind of investigate the fires.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Anxiety is just that. It is a body alarm.
Yeah.
It is your body. And a lot of people are willing to say they have anxiety, but not as easy to say, I have depression.
Yeah.
But if you have anxiety, you also have some moments of depression too, right? But whatever, don't get me started on that one. But anxiety is just our body letting us know that it's feeling fearful of something, that it is feeling a sort of big way, and it doesn't know what to do about it.
Yeah.
It doesn't know how to move through it.
Yeah.
And it's really like that. It's a fire alarm.
Yeah.
It's our body being like, oh, so we have to learn how to identify when the fire alarm's happening.
Yeah.
Well, how is our body? Because we will actually, I don't know if you know this, but like with the vagus nerve, 80% of all information from our body is coming up to the brain, and the brain's interpreting it. Yep. Only 20% goes the opposite way.
Yeah.
Like science has proven that with the vagus nerve theory or the vagal theory. So honestly, knowing that is we have to know when the body is showing us alarm. If we're not even taking the time to notice it, that's the very first step. We can't do anything if we don't know what our body is actually trying to communicate or that it is even communicating.
Yeah, totally. So there's several different ways that someone might be clued into the fact that they have trauma or emotional healing to be done, right?
Yeah.
It could be presence of chronic physical ailments, like you mentioned. It could be bewildering behaviors and that they can't figure out why they can't just act in a certain way or move in a certain direction. It could be presence of depression or anxiety. It could be things like addiction, emotional eating. All of these would fit under the umbrella of there might be something here. There might be a fire alarm going off, and it might be helpful to get some help from a coach, from an emotional health coach, from a trauma coach, but to get some help to investigate the fires, to figure out, I like the fire analogy because
I do too. I love it.
There's so many different types of fires. You've got grease fires, you've got, electrical fires, you've got chemical fires, and they all require different tools. They all require different methods of putting the fire out.
Yes.
You can't have a one size fits all approach, right?
Yeah.
And so I love the analogy of just investigating the fire alarm and the fire and figuring out where did this originate? What are the tools that we need to work on? What's missing? Right. And so I think that kind of moves us, I think, into the next question, which is, in your experience, how does someone heal from trauma? How, and also, what is your approach and what is like the philosophy that you've sort of come to in your work for doing so?
Sure. So I think it's a holistic, integrative approach. I know that's pretty vague. I'll get into specifics, but really it is. It's not just one modality. I think the brain and our bodies are so complex that we have to hit it from all levels. I mean, to heal it from any addiction, you have to hit it from all levels, right? And just emotional healing at large, I'm what I would call a somatic coach, which means I'm body led. It means that I'm respecting that the body is a communicator and has a lot of insight and wisdom for us to listen to. Right. And guided by that. I've done cognitive therapy. I did 2 decades of cognitive talk therapy. And I still found myself literally just like 3.5 years ago in the bottom of the pit again. I'd struggled with anxiety to some extent and depression to some extent here and there as adulthood hit. And I had some big trauma events that people would be able to pinpoint like, oh yeah, that's a trauma very clearly. My nervous system just started to fall apart. And so 3.5 years ago, I was like, talk therapy, it has me going in circles. Like it's helped in some crisis moments just to, talk through it with somebody who's safe, because that is a very important part of the healing process is having somebody to co-regulate with, somebody you can feel safe with, to be seen and heard by somebody. But what I learned is that my body, I needed so much more. I needed to really befriend all of the parts of me, the parts that I hated, the parts that I despised and I was disgusted by, the parts of me that annoyed me and frustrated me, the parts that made me angry. All of the parts of me, because what was happening was this polarization that you were talking about earlier. And, we have one part that's feeling a certain sort of way. And then we have this other part that comes on board and is shaming and bullying the other one, making the other part feel stupid and like they suck for feeling that way. And so it's like mending. I had to learn how to mend the parts within me and really come to a place of loving myself, responding to myself, respecting and honoring me and all of the parts of me. Any emotional state that comes up, learning how to move through it on my own, not relying on somebody else to do it for me, but actually I needed tools in the moment to be able to do it. But I also needed to learn nervous system regulation education. I needed to learn what my brain and my body were even doing. That was probably one of the biggest things that helped me to feel less shame about myself and where I was at and feeling stuck in anxiety and depression. I was like, wow, every human is going through this nervous system, wave.
Yeah.
It's like the ocean. I mean, we're all going between fight or flight and freeze all day long.
Yeah.
We're having activation and deactivation. And it's we have, depression and severe anxiety when we get stuck in one of those states.
Yes.
So learning tools to guide my nervous system biologically, physiologically, back to a state of peace and calm so that I then could do the emotional work and I could do the inner child healing work and going and resolving some of the things of the past, because every trigger that we have today, anything that annoys us, frustrates us, makes us angry, makes us feel any sort of way, is directly related to our past experiences.
Yes.
It's deeply connected, and oftentimes deeply connected to our childhood.
Yeah.
And some of that is just because it's been unresolved, unreconciled within us. We're not at peace with what has happened in the past. And we have to make peace with ourselves first before we can make peace with the things of the past. And I kind of think that my approach is doing it integratively at the same time.
Yeah.
And also recognizing that our body can physically release trauma and stress through gentle movements.
Yeah.
That was another mind-blowing thing for me to recognize that was an aspect that I needed. The only way for me to truly connect to my body again after abuse and after traumas of the past was to actually gently move, not hardcore move.
Yeah.
Gentle movements that release trauma in specific areas of my body where it's mostly stored.
Yeah.
So learning that was mind-blowing.
Yeah. So I'm hearing a couple of different components when it comes to kind of like what the work looks like.
Yeah.
Part of it I'm hearing is, because I think what I see a lot is a lot of people walking around stuck in a survival state, stuck in fight or flight, stuck in freeze mode, right? Their stress hormones are like constantly elevated. They're constantly tense and carrying tension in various parts of their body, which is oftentimes causing like pain in different parts of their body. They're feeling in an almost constant state of anxiety sometimes, or just that roller coaster up and down of anxiety. And so the first component that I'm kind of hearing is that it's really just about helping people to be able to recognize when they're in that state, walk themselves back out of that state by whether it's through breath work or different tools that you teach them, you give them the tools, you give them the frameworks to be able to bring their nervous system back down, release some of that tension, get them out of that fight or flight, that freeze state, so that they have the opportunity to connect with themselves. They have the opportunity to think more rationally and to engage in emotional work.
Yes.
Because what I'm hearing is you can't really do that work when you're in that fight or flight, or when you're stuck in that freeze type of a state. Is that right?
Yeah. And I would even say that, recognition is first, acceptance is second. Because we all don't like the negative, bad feelings and emotions that we've all deemed to be bad, like anger or, frustration or, all of those things. Even jealousy, right? Like all of these emotions, if we looked at the emotion wheel, we would say, oh, those are the bad ones and those are the good ones, but it's not. They're all messengers.
Yes.
All emotions are messengers. And so if we can accept and sit with them, I teach my clients how to hold space for their emotions, allow them to be there and allow them to be heard and seen and a little bit affirmed and validated. It makes sense is one of my favorite phrases. It makes sense that you would feel that way. It makes sense I would feel that way. It is a frustrating circumstance, So
Yeah, absolutely. So, helping people to be able to bring their bodies back to a place where they can actually have the opportunity to do that.
Yes.
Right. To sit and have space to investigate the fire, investigate the fire alarm being the emotion.
Yes.
It's not a bad emotion. It's here to tell me something. It's here to signal me that there's something to be done here. Right. And then, of course, there's a whole toolbox, it sounds like, of different tools and different methods that you might utilize with someone once you have them maybe in that state, or once you've taught them these tools and they've been able to get themselves into that state, that they can use those tools to be able to work with whatever those emotions and those things are in a more effective way.
Exactly.
Yeah. Awesome. The other thing that before we move on, that I think it's probably really important to acknowledge, an initial thought that I had when you first started talking about the approaches and how this all works is, I think it's important for people to have good expectations about, there are two things that came up. One, that this takes time. Mm-hmm. This is not something that happens very quickly.
It's slow and steady, which our culture does not like.
No.
We're a microwave culture. We want it done now.
Yes. Social media and microwaves did that to us, right?
Yes.
We want everything, it's the same thing in weight loss. Weight loss people are looking for solutions, right? They want a pill. They want just the right workout program. They want just the right diet that will nick it for them. And I spend a lot of time with our clients in Healthy and Whole, helping them to accept, like you said, the reality that there is no solution to their permanent or sustainable weight loss. They are the solution.
Yes.
They are the solution.
100%.
They have to acquire the knowledge, the tools, the frameworks. They have to become the person capable of the life and the body and the health that they desire.
Yes.
And in this case, it is, so what I tell them is that when you embark on your health journey with us, it's like going to college. Like, expect that this is going to be not 6 months of work, but 3 or 4 years of good, solid work, because you're going on this journey of learning and practicing and reprogramming and
rewiring everything about you.
Literally changing your identity as a person.
Yeah.
Identifying your beliefs and your perspectives that are sort of lying at the root cause of a lot of your issues.
Yeah.
And it just takes time, right? It takes a lot of time. And the other thing that I wanted to point out that I think you hinted at and alluded to with your own story is that you're never done, right? Just with weight loss, there's never a point at which time, even when you reach your goal weight, you're not done.
No, I'm one of those people that shares on social media when I'm going through a thing and how I'm moving through the thing, because I feel like it humanizes the fact that, yes, I'm sitting over here with lots of certifications and trainings as a coach, but I'm human and we're all human. And the realistic goal is that we will ebb and flow like the waves in the ocean, because that's what our nervous systems do.
Yeah.
And that's what the world does. I mean, our life is an ebb and flow of chaos of different things coming and going.
Yes. So I think it's important for people to understand that there's never this moment where you reach a perfect state where you never fall into what I would call the pit, right?
Yeah.
Like there's never a point where life can't take you by surprise.
Right.
That happened to me recently. I've shared on social media and with our clients and even on podcast episodes that, I found somewhat in recent history that I had an issue with drinking, right? Came out of nowhere. Here I am, this coach, founder of this program and coaching all these clients, and I'm having a problem with drinking. And I had to investigate that. I had to figure that out.
I thought that was really brave of you, actually. I saw that post and
thank you.
To say that.
Yeah.
Be honest.
Vulnerability is I think vulnerability is one of the most powerful tools we have to work on our relationship with ourselves.
Amen.
And 100%. I think we could, maybe a future episode, we can dive into some of these awesome tools that people might learn.
Yeah.
But, perfect example. We both shared examples where, no matter where you're at on the journey and on the spectrum, life can still happen. There's still storms of life that can really knock you back down. And we have to use the same tools that we teach people to build ourselves back up. We have to become aware. We have to bring ourselves back to a place where we can open up space and explore what we're feeling. And then we have to do the same work, right? So
I think that's what makes a good coach, honestly, is being able to be vulnerable. And I think that's the big difference between a coach and a therapist, honestly, is because I never once heard my therapists really admit to me any of their own struggles. It was almost like they were on a pedestal and I was over here and they're helping little me. But there's power in when I had a trauma coach that helped me 3.5 years ago move through my experiences, because I was looking for something different.
Yeah.
And she shared her personal struggles in real time with me. And she's like, I'm struggling with that too. And I'm like, oh, I don't have to feel and carry the shame of being where I'm at.
Yeah.
Like, oh, what I'm experiencing is human.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's okay.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I think this kind of is a great segue into, the next question, which is, what are some of the different ways that working with a trauma or an emotional health coach would be different, or what could people expect that experience to be like in different ways than working with a traditional or through traditional therapy or counseling or something like that? You just mentioned one, which is an open mutual, relationship or sharing of vulnerability, which is, I think, is one first aspect of that.
It is. And the layer of that, if you look at the nervous system, part of it is that we're co-regulating. I am not above you. We are peers, but I am a guide. So I view myself as a guide, and I am guiding you to find the power to heal within yourself.
Yeah.
So one of the big differences that I saw from my own experiences is that my phone is open to my one-on-one clients. They have access to me. I ask them to show me accountability of what they've done. I give homework.
Yeah.
I do give some homework because what we're doing is we're working towards behavioral change. Yeah. And so I give tangible tools for them to learn and practice throughout the week.
Yeah.
And then I actually check in with my clients and say, hey, how's it going this week?
Yeah.
Have you done any of the work? Is it hard? Are you having any resistance? Let's move through the resistance.
Yep.
I also leave the door open for, those one-on-one, those moments of crisis, or the moments where I'm feeling a big sort of way and I don't know how to move through it. Yeah. I tell my clients that it's an opportunity. Those are the opportunities that actually, if I could help guide them to a resource or a tool to try, that then they can begin to take their power back.
Yeah.
Because then they can help themselves move through it instead of just saying, oh, I'm going to table it. I'll talk about it at the next appointment. Yeah. And then the next appointment comes and you're like, oh, that was so many days ago. What did I feel? What was going on? How is my body showing me? They're out of it.
Yeah.
And those are the moments where we have to actually learn to move through and navigate them differently in order to break the cycles.
Yeah.
My counselors never had a phone line open. I had to pay to actually have another appointment if I wanted to have any conversation, really. Yeah. I mean, some do. Yeah. Some will have a few minutes here or there, or like, hey, email recap. Here's what's going on. Just letting you know before me or one of my kids or, somebody in our family goes into the appointment.
Yeah.
But that's about it.
Yeah.
It's different.
It sounds very similar to what we do with our clients in that, we really like in our end of work, more when we're talking about physical health, especially, we have doctors, nutritionists on one hand who it's very much the same way. It's like, they're like the version of a therapist in your line of work where it's like, you go, you make the appointment. It's very surface level. Yep. It's very one way. It's not very comprehensive, it's very one size fits all type of a thing. And here we are over here, and same thing on our end. Our clients have daily access to us as coaches. They have peer groups, right, where we put them into support peer groups. We have what we call breakthrough sessions, right? So like that's what I kind of think you're describing is, hey, if I have a client who's in crisis, we're not going to schedule something a week out. We're going to try our best to get on a call or to meet right now to seize on this potential for a breakthrough. Right. Like right now, while all of this is fresh.
In the heat of it. Yeah.
In the heat of it. And those are the types of things that I think are the real difference makers between people getting started and trying to make progress, whether it's in any aspect of their health, but especially their emotional health, because it requires a whole new dimension of accountability, support, and open lines of communication, relating and being able to communicate and relate to between coach and client on a way that they've never been able to do with anybody else.
Yeah. I know a lot of therapists and psychologists that are actually moving into becoming coaches instead, leaving the practice and starting their own things classified as coaches because of all of the restrictions.
Yes.
You can't blame them. I mean, they have their hands are tied to some extent as therapists and counselors. I mean, legality wise. Yes.
It's the same thing with nutritionists in our line of work with like weight loss. a lot of nutritionists, they get mad, at us who are out here doing coaching with people, because we have no limitations, right? We can coach them in all of the ways. We can communicate with them in all of the ways. We can, we're not bound by regulations. That could be a double-edged sword, right?
Yeah, it could
right?
be.
It can be it could be a double-edged sword if you're a bad actor and you're not trying to be in integrity and having the client's best interest at heart.
Very true.
And believe me, there are coaches out there in all industries who are bad actors, and you have to be careful. But we've had folks who have come in and completely reversed, type 2 diabetes, come off of all of their medications, no blood pressure medication, all of that stuff. And doctors and everybody is like, how did you do it? And it's because, we got outside of the box. We gave the clients what they needed. Mm-hmm. We gave them the amount of exposure of coaching and attention and education, just the right amount of all of those things to be able support. To bridge the gap between here's what you need to do and here's how you do it.
Yeah. In real time.
In real time. Yes. So, but a lot of nutritionists get really upset, and, the other day I had a moment, right, where I was triggered, and someone had tagged me in one of the chatter groups here around, like in another town. They were asking for a coach. They asked for a nutritionist, right? And someone tagged me and said, "Hey, Healthy and Whole really, helped me and changed my life. You should reach out to them." And a nutritionist, jumped on and said, I got on your website and I don't see that you're a nutritionist, and it triggered me for a moment. And, but I used my emotional tools and I walked back from it and I said, her response is about her, not about me. And
exactly.
And all of that has everything to do with her fears and her, all that stuff, and not about me. So I used some good tools in that moment,
good for you.
But it's, there is a lot of frustration, and I see the same thing. I see nutritionists stepping down from hospital organizations and things like that and saying, I can actually help people my way when I step out of some of these traditional methods. And I think that's probably what's awesome about what you're doing, is that you have a lot more freedom to work. It sounds like you've really kind of put together your own philosophy and your own very unique proprietary approach for doing what you do, pulling from all of these different aspects of emotional and emotional work and somatic work and trauma work, and putting it all together.
Yeah, because cognitive is a part of it. I mean, I don't want to dismiss that part of it either, because I know I haven't really said very much about that, but it is valuable and it is needed. And, mindset and the stories and our belief systems and all of that is a huge part of it. It's just that sometimes we're so stuck we can't access that part and we can't move forward on that part until the other stuff is there. So I believe it needs to be comprehensive. We need all of it, because I'm actually an NLP practitioner as well. So I have the cognitive and the somatic training too.
Yeah. I think that's probably, when I think about the future of coaching, of getting really the best outcomes that we could possibly get for people in physical, mental, emotional health. Right now the statistics are not great. Right. The number of people that struggle with anxiety and depression is really through the roof.
Especially after COVID.
Oh, it's so much worse now. And the same thing when you look at obesity, diabetes, prediabetes, the statistics are really atrocious. And, the statistics for people who actually have long-term success is less than 10%, as of using traditional means, less than 10% success rates. And I think that the way I see all of our industries evolving is that we're getting away from this, I'm an NLP, I'm a somatic therapist, I'm a counselor, I'm a cognitive behavioral, coach. And we're starting to recognize that there are parts of all of these that are very, very, very effective and useful.
Yes.
And we're starting to have coaches like yourself and programs like us who we're saying, okay, we're going to take the best from all of these realms where we've seen the most effective outcomes for our clients, and we're meshing them together And we're able to do that because we're not being territorial about, I'm a nutritionist, or I'm an NLP, I'm in the NLP camp, or I'm the cognitive behavioral therapy camp, right?
Well, yeah, because it's like the bio on a social media, thing to try and fit all of the things that I actually do. I'm like, there ain't no way I can even start because I have so much training and so many different things, because I believe every person, it's not a one size fits all approach either.
Yes. Yeah.
Some people need a little bit more of something than the other. But having the access to all of these resources is beneficial. I think my husband's kind of funny. He says, I'll be a student for life. Like if I could do anything, I would just go and take classes and trainings and learn for the rest of my life. And I'm like, yep, that's pretty much what I plan to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, but you think I think about a big name in transformational coaching, obviously, is Tony Robbins.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
I went to his... Yeah.
But look at Tony Robbins. Tony Robbins is exactly that. Tony Robbins has throughout the decades pulled from so many different realms of coaching,
He
life
uses
coaching,
EFT tapping,
everything,
which is very somatic. I mean, I'm an EFT tapping practitioner as well, but but he's, renowned as an NLP, cause that's his biggest, thing, but he integrates so many things actually. If you participate in one of his events, I think it was 4 or 5 days long that I went to, man, I walked on fire too.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is pre-COVID when everything was live.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we walked on fire, on coals. I mean, incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah. And I think what's unique about him is that he's doing that. He's pulled from all of these different disciplines. And the reason he can get on stage, and almost no matter who it is, and no matter what their problem is, he can be an effective coach for them because he has this massive toolbox of tools and knowledge and frameworks and approaches. And he's very good at recognizing very quickly, depending on the person, which tool.
Yes. But you know what? Interestingly, at the beginning of his journey, he decided he was going to take on anybody.
Yeah.
And that he would
figure it out. Yeah.
He had decided that I will do whatever it takes to figure out how to help this person.
Yeah.
And I'm not stopping until I do.
Absolutely.
And that's grit.
Yeah. Well, and I think that is why I'm very excited about you and the work that you do and the discussions that we've already had. And the reason you're here is because I recognize that mindset within you. And it's very much in alignment with how we operate with Healthy and Whole too. I tell our clients basically every year we are going after and tackling another aspect of holistic, sustainable, long-term health that we've not totally tackled yet. This year, our biggest thing is emotional eating and stress eating. And I think that's probably what drew me to you as we are exploring building out, our own toolkits and saying, okay, well, we're really good at teaching X, Y, and Z, but our clients still seem to be struggling in this realm. How can we get really good at handling and working with clients in this realm, right? Which is why I'm just so excited to have met you and to be able to be having, collaboration and conversations around this as well. And I'm super excited to continue on with this conversation and to have many conversations in the future.
Yeah.
Because I just think there's so much that, we could collaborate on, and so much that we could, so much growth here and such a huge need for it as well. So moving on to kind of the next question here, we've kind of talked about what is trauma. We've talked about how to know and all the different ways that we might recognize that we have trauma or that there's work to be done here that might elicit finding help and getting some coaching. The next thing I would ask is, what are some of the things that you see getting in the way that hold people back or prevent them from taking the step to get help?
Yeah, I would say, there's multiple, right? People will use the time factor as a lot. We're in a hustle and grind culture. So people are like, I don't have time for that.
Yeah.
People will use money as another one of I just don't have the funds to do that.
Yeah.
It's just not a priority to them. I think the biggest one is fear. I think fear of the unknown.
Yeah.
Fear of emotions. Fear of digging into something that might feel too much.
Yeah.
And it's foreign territory, and it makes sense because our brains are developed to protect us from danger. And so we feel a threat by going into vulnerable spaces.
Yeah.
and being vulnerable. And so opening up this door to recognize like that's the only way through.
Yeah.
Is through vulnerability and through acceptance and through seeing what is really here and present.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are some big ones.
Yeah. I think this is something that there are so many different facets of things that would prevent people from really seeking out. One that you mentioned earlier is just that they don't know what they don't know.
Yes.
Not having awareness that there is a problem.
That's a big one.
They get so used to being dysregulated and being in a dysfunctional state that dysfunctional state or dysregulation becomes their new sense of normal.
Yeah.
And they just think this is just my life. This is just how it is.
Well, we accept living in survival mode. We accept mediocre. We accept, okay is good enough.
Yes.
Because like things are hard. The world is messy. And so, we're like, oh, if I'm just okay, that's good.
Yeah.
I'll call it a good day. If I can just stay above, like just barely make it through the day. That's good. I made it through.
Yeah. And that really
sad.
It really breaks my heart.
Me too.
Right.
Me too.
As someone who has personally been on both sides of the coin, I can very vividly think back to my life. When I look at my life, I see my life as being sort of, there's like before I started my journey of self-development and personal growth, and then there's the life in the me after.
Yeah.
And when I think back to that version of me, before it, and that I can look at my clients and the type of people that we work with now, I've been there, right? Yeah. And I really relate on so many different levels to where they're at. But I'm so happy and so blessed that I was able to have the epiphany that it's not okay to stay there.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't want to
stay there.
But you know what? Sometimes it takes getting to that bottom level before people actually, when they're feeling like they're breaking.
Yes.
I mean, for me, I had been doing things. I would say even before 3.5 years ago, I was in what I would say would be self-development. I was growth minded. I had a growth mindset, but something hit me from, from the side, threw me off, and it collapsed my nervous system. Yeah. And it built slowly, but it was still like, it was like a big hit. Yeah. And then I didn't know what to do with it. Yeah. And finally I found myself like, I'm not wanting to get out of bed. Yeah. Oh my gosh, I'm not wanting to get out of bed. Yeah. I'm getting up and I'm doing what has to be done. Yeah. The basic survival things for my kids. But I am barely surviving here. Yeah. And I'm so disgusted by continuing day after day living that way that I'm willing to do whatever it takes. But unfortunately, people sometimes don't take action until they're at that point where their disgust is so incredible. And actually, that's the one thing that Tony Robbins is amazing at. He actually, in his live events, will guide people to feel so much self-disgust that they want to change. That's NLP. I mean, part of NLP is that. Like, it's, shifting your state to get to that point where there's fire under you to actually move and take action.
Creating that leverage.
Looking ahead. What is your life going to look like 5 years from now if you continue at this pace? 10 years, 20 years. If you don't change a thing, what's it going to look like?
Yeah.
It's big.
Absolutely. So, it breaks my heart to see that. And my hope for anybody who's watching this and listening to it is if you do feel stuck, if you feel like you are stuck in you don't want to get out of bed in the morning. You dread getting started with your day. Just understand that it may be your current present day normal, but it's not the way it has to be
forever. Yeah.
It does not have to be that way. Right. And it shouldn't be that way. And if you do, muster the courage to get a little bit of help, right? There is I say this from deep personal experience. The life that I lead today is one that I could not have imagined 10 years ago.
Yeah.
I would not have believed that the life and the person who I am today was possible. And it's even weird for me to sit here and say that because obviously I think you can hear the level of the amount of self-love and appreciation I have for myself. at this stage of my life, in being able to say that. I could never have imagined saying that 10 years ago.
Yeah, me neither.
You know, but I can say it with confidence today. And I think that I just want people to know that's possible for all of us.
Right. It is.
You know,
there's hope for sure.
There 100% is hope. We just have to, the first step, I think, is just recognizing that, you know, there is a problem, and there is pathway forward.
Yeah.
There's a road forward to get some help.
Yeah.
And then just deciding to, even if it's just reaching out to someone and exploring an option, right? Can start you down the right path.
Yeah.
So that kind of leads me to this next question here as we kind of get down here toward the end, which is, what if someone is listening to this right now and they're thinking to themselves, okay, guys, I hear you. You're touching, you're striking a chord within my heart and my mind right now. My interest is piqued. I don't want to continue in the state or repeating the patterns that I have been, and I do want to get some help. What does that journey, can you describe what that would look like for them?
You know, first I'll say it's messy. My handle on Instagram and Facebook is Dancing in the Mess, because that's what we're doing. And it is a slow and steady approach, like you had said before. But it's titrated, and that's a word in the nervous system industry, you know, of just like, we titrate, which means we go one step into the mess. We pause, we pull back if we need to. We breathe, we collect ourselves, then we go a little step further. And then we take steps that are, we feel like we can tolerate. And we're expanding our window of tolerance every single time we take one little messy step of action forward. And knowing it's going to feel uncomfortable. It's going to feel a little scary. I'm not asking, like a lot of mindset coaches are like, just do the dang thing.
Rip the Band-Aid off.
Rip the Band-Aid, jump off the cliff, just do it. And I'm like, oh boy, my nervous system doesn't like that. And it makes people feel stuck, like they're incapable. And then it makes people feel like they suck because they can't seem to do that. The nervous system needs a slow, gentle approach. It really does. It needs us to be tender, gentle, and kind and loving with it. So we move into it one little step at a time, and we just keep taking little steps, and every step compounds. And sooner or later, you find yourself living a completely different life, like you and I are. You know?
I love that approach of, and I'm sure it's comforting for people to hear that is the approach, knowing that, okay, I'm not going to just jump into this and Jill's going to rip the Band-Aid off, and she's going to rip away all of my comforts, and I'm just going to be raw, and I'm going to feel all of the stuff that I've been avoiding.
And leave feeling awful.
And,
my clients aren't allowed to leave feeling awful because I always teach my clients to bubble wrap experiences. Like we go into the mess, but then we nourish afterwards. We nourish our nervous system, our mind, our body, our spirit by giving it what it craves, what it loves, what feels at peace. And we have to have both. We have to hold space for both the pain and the pleasure in order to truly heal in a balanced approach.
I love that, because it is, like you said, messy, and it can be very draining, exhausting, work to do. And so I love the fact that you make sure to end on a higher, more positive note for people, and not to kind of open up the wound and then send them out the door.
Well, and if I do, and if we, I give the thing that they have to do after the call is independent. Like, hey, what are you going to do? Accountability. What are you going to do? Like, to guide yourself to a space where you feel okay. If they leave feeling a little bit still messy, it's like, okay, well then you pull back. This is titration. We pull back and we nourish. We love.
I love it. It sounds, similar to kind of the approach that we take, which is, I use the analogy a lot with climbing a mountain with our clients. We talk about 4 phases of sort of the journey that they go through. The first phase being what we call the hope phase, and then they go into the pit, and then they have the climb, and then they get to the mountaintop. And the first phase is hope. It's kind of like, okay, I'm excited to try this. I'm excited to get started. There's hope, right? And then they get into it and they start really doing the work and they're like, this is harder than the reality of the work sets in, right?
Yeah.
The reality of the scope of their goals and the scope of what it's going to take to really, truly get there, to become who they need to become. They're faced with that reality, but then we coach them through to accepting that and embracing what, like, that mindset. Like a mountain climber would need to embrace who they are to be able to want to climb that mountain. And but it's kind of like, how do you climb a mountain? One step, one grip at a time. You don't, it's not an elevator. It's not, it's slow, methodical, safe work.
Yes. Safety is key with emotional healing. Safety is number one priority. Doing what makes your nervous system feel safe. Your nervous system, what makes yours safe is going to look different than mine.
Yes.
It's a very individualized experience of safety and recreating safety when we've lacked safety for potentially decades or our entire life. What I've found myself at 40 years old is when my nervous system collapsed. And I'm like, wow, I haven't felt safe my whole life. I haven't felt safe within myself. I didn't even know that was possible. Or people could live differently than that.
And so it's kind of like, again, to go back to the mountain climbing analogy, if you're really climbing a mountain, you don't do so without certain safety gear and different things like that. So I think that's probably a lot of what you do is you just make sure that we're stepping in, we're doing the work, but we're making sure we're doing it in a way and we're giving you the tools to feel safe while you do it.
Yes.
Which I think is beautiful.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I think this is a really great place for us to kind of wrap today's discussion.
Yeah, it's been awesome.
For everybody who's listening, we're going to do, I think, many future episodes together. And because there's so many different areas and things that we would love to be able to get in and unpack and teach when it comes to this stuff. And so, first of all, for those who are really, their interest is piqued and they're seeing some hope on the horizon, how can they find you? Where can they find you on social media, on the internet? And how, if they wanted to reach out to you, would they reach out to you to do some coaching work with you?
Yeah, sure. So on social media platforms, I did choose the handle Dancing in the Mess. My full name is Jill Marie Howell, because of wanting distinction between other people, that exist in the world. I went ahead and did my whole name. So my URL is actually my full name. It's jillmariehowell.com. So you can find me in any of those places and message me directly in any of those places, really.
Awesome. Fantastic. I will put all of that down into the show notes on all of the different platforms where we publish this. And then also, if you're watching on YouTube and you have found value in this, I would love it if you would hit the subscribe button and hit the like button so that you can be notified when we post future episodes. And that's a wrap for this one. We'll see you guys in the next episode.
Yeah. Thanks so much.
Yep. Thank you.